Thanks, Tim, and pleasure to be with you. And also thanks to everyone who's joined online to have a listen. So I just wanted to give you a brief overview of Phoslock Environmental Technologies, or PET, and we can move through the first couple of slides. The next one is a disclaimer. So what we do is we help remediate environmental waterways, particularly those that are impacted by excess levels of phosphorus. The company is here in Australia, so been operating for over 20 years. We have a global footprint of around 22 full-time staff, plus numerous agents, licensees and distributors around the world, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail in a minute. We're headquartered here in Melbourne, security ASX code of PET, as you mentioned. The flagship product is called Phoslock, and it's a phosphorus binding agent originally designed by CSIRO here in Australia, and it binds phosphorus in freshwater situations and renders it into an environmentally benign state. We recently also added another product called Phosflow, which actually works in flowing water. It does the same job as in capturing phosphorus or excess phosphorus, but in flowing water situations. So if you like, rivers, canals, stormwater treatment, etc. The products themselves have been extensively reviewed for Phoslock, well over 100 peer-reviewed publications in various scientific journals around the world around its efficacy and safety. There are some distinct advantages that we have over some other products in this space. And to date, we've done well over 300 applications around the world with Phoslock, and a number just starting with Phosflow. Thank you. Next slide. So for those who don't know, and I'm sure most of you do, phosphorus or nutrient pollution in waterways is a huge issue, and it's growing, as you can imagine. Particularly, it can be a natural phenomenon, as in the pollution naturally occurring. However, human activity is accelerating the process, and phosphorus in particular is one of the biggest problems that the environmental agencies in Europe identify in their waterways. Thank you. I won't go through all the data on this slide, but it gives you a little bit of a view of the global issue that phosphorus pollution is. 71% of the US states have impaired water quality, or lakes of the US states have impaired water quality. More than 83% of the freshwater habitats in the European Union are classified as being unfavourable. And that process or that problem, or this problem, only continues to grow with things like global warming and increased human activity, both agriculturally and just from urban activity, as you can imagine. Thank you. So the products that we have for this, for treating this problem, and as you can imagine, it is a worldwide problem. It's not confined to any particular geography. Is Phoslock, as I mentioned, developed by CSIRO back in the 90s. It's a bentonite clay with a lanthanum compound, a lanthanum molecule onto that clay, and the lanthanum molecule is the binding agent that attracts phosphorus very tightly. And when that bond occurs, it drops to the bottom of the waterway as a very fine sediment in an inert and forever bound compound. So it's a very safe, environmentally friendly product that makes phosphorus inert in that system. As I mentioned earlier, it's been thoroughly researched by peers and various scientific organisations all over the world, with a number of different accreditations in drinking water situations in Brazil, for example, and various other ISO accreditations around the world. Thank you. As I said, Phoslock tends to work best in slow or still water situations. So treating the inflows into lakes and water catchment areas is obviously a critical component too. So we're very pleased last year to secure the exclusive distribution of a product called Phosflow, which actually works in the flowing water situation. So as I mentioned, in rivers, creeks, stormwaters, drain, wastewater systems, etc. This product works on the flowing water and is typically put into a medium, like easiest to think of it as a tea bag, that is put into the waterway, a large tea bag often, and then is removed once that product is fully absorbed onto the pellets of Phosflow. So you can see a few of the applications that this product can be used in for agriculture, from livestock, dairies, water restorations, aquacultures, wastewater treatment, stormwater management, mining is another one not listed there, but many other segments that need phosphorus captured in the waterways. Thank you. So for the business itself, we tend to operate it under 4 pillars. I won't go through all of them, but customer and commercial is probably the most important. Manufacturing, supply chain, R&D, and of course our people. So thanks. Next slide. We have a 2-tiered approach to selling the product around the world. We call it a direct model and a distribution model. So the distribution model is a little newer to the business. Really only in the last 18 months have we implemented this strategy. And with the distribution focus, we tend to look for partners in whatever geography we're talking about, who may in turn then be selling to applicators who actually work on water bodies. And these distributors will have a number of private, municipal, ag or mining, recreational drinking water bodies that they actually manage for various other issues as well. And so by partnering with these guys, we get to do a lot of more repeatable, sometimes smaller treatments, but more repeatable products in various geographies that we've targeted. So that's a very important component to complement what we call our direct model, which typically is the larger lakes, the larger water bodies that are perhaps bigger in volume, but less frequent in terms of when those projects can be completed. So we've established many distribution relationships around the world. And I think on the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about those. Yeah, so we operate in Canada, in the US, Europe, China, Australia, New Zealand, and Brazil, with various distribution positions in each of those countries. We're working on a registration in Canada with many projects on standby there. We have projects underway in the US with the US Army Corps of Engineers and the City of Orlando doing trial work for us down in Florida, and many large lake projects that are in development in the US as well as in Europe, particularly in the Nordic countries, Germany and the Netherlands. Very important components. In both the US and Europe, they have restrictions on how much phosphorus is allowed in their lakes. So unfortunately, they haven't quite worked out how to manage and monitor that, or if you like, what punishment might be to lake managers who don't do it. But you can imagine that's a great help to us to have these levels already set by the local jurisdictions. We manufacture in China. We have a smaller distribution wholesale model now in China after some issues in China in the past. And as I mentioned, here in Australia, we have the head office with the functions of a head office, as you'd expect. Thank you. Just mindful of time, I think I will skip through this, but as I mentioned, there's many projects that are ongoing around the world at various stages of development. Perhaps the next slide actually talks about this even better. It's on our website. It talks about active projects with the caveat that they're just projects at this point. As soon as they become contracts, we obviously would advise the market. So they're things that we're working on at various stages of development, of various stages of various size of the projects, and it gives potential investors or investors an opportunity to have a look at what we're working on. As I say, with the caveat that they're not always guaranteed to happen. These projects have to be developed. They're obviously, some of them contain pretty significant some costs for government. Thank you. The R&D projects that we talk about, I mean, to summarise this quickly, is the other big pollutant that we don't have a product for at this point, but we're working on, is nitrogen. So that's a heavy focus for us in the R&D space. Clearly, the flowing water phosphorus product was, which we brought in last year. Now our focus turns to nitrogen capturing products. Thank you. And the outlook and the priorities for the business, turning these opportunities into sales is clearly my number one focus. We're looking at how we can help fund some of the projects that we're talking to various governments about, because obviously funding is a key component in these. Looking at other partnerships and technologies in water remediation space. We're continuing the R&D focus. We've also reviewed and talked a lot about in the past the manufacturing strategy, potentially for a Western Hemisphere manufacturing plant. Identified a facility in the US that we would go with, pending a complete review of project focus and forecasts. Thanks, Tim. I'm just mindful of time, so I'm skipping through.
Thanks, Lockie.
Yep.
We've got a few questions, actually. You want to touch on funding?
Yeah, so we finished the year, and I should point out that our full year results will be out at the end of the month. So a little bit more will be obviously talked about then when we're ready to do that. We finished the year at about 14.5. You know, that's a number that allows us to continue to grow the business, and on projections and forecasts, if those forecasts happen, and that's obviously part of what I've been trying to get across, is the challenge around timing is significant. You know, the funding for the business is appropriate. Thanks,
Lockie.
I think.
Just a couple of questions, if you don't mind. We're almost out of time. Is it a one-off process with the lake or the waterway, and how often do you have to come back? And I assume you're dealing with governments. There's a question here: is there kind of any evidence that the government bodies are kind of allocating more money to this problem?
Yeah, a couple of really good questions. So yes, there is an annuity position that we try to take around each and every project. So typically, the first treatment would be the remediation treatment, the bigger treatment, if you like, to settle the phosphorus levels down, and then we would expect to come back to those lakes in, say, 2 or 3 years with what we would call the top-up dose, if you like, which is obviously less, but continues on then for a number of years thereafter. And that is what we try to do with each and every project that we have. Obviously, that changes a bit with Phosflow, which then looks at the input phosphorus levels, and that provides that total solution that we're looking for. And the second part of the question was,
let's go to the sales pipeline. There's a couple of questions on that as well.
Yeah, sorry, it was government, but that's right.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, you're dealing with government, I suppose. Is that difficult in regards to building that sales pipeline?
Yeah, look, it's both good and bad. One, most governments tend to pay. I say most because not all, but most do, which is very good from that point of view. And the second thing with dealing with governments that everyone would know is clearly the focus has been more on health and COVID and various other challenges that they've had in the last few years. So that's been difficult to then get them to come back to environment, but they are now. There's no question in the US and places like that they're back focusing on where we'd like them to, which is water remediation.
There's another question here on Canada. It's a large market. What's your focus there?
Yeah, so Canada's one of the few geographies in the world that we're battling with the authorities over the regulatory status of the product. We've had no issue anywhere else in the world, but Canada is one of those where we're having a battle, which is, for those who know Canada, perhaps not surprising, but we've treated under license and under R&D permits a number of projects in Canada, and we have a number lined up, but we've just got to sort this regulatory issue out, which I believe we will, but it's just, it's dealing with government and it's taking some time. So, but yeah, it's a key focus for us.